I'm Bill Auten of Auten Claims Management.
I'm Chantal Roberts of CMR Consulting, and welcome to the Art of Adjusting podcast.
Today, we're going to talk about life as an insurance adjuster from the perspective of property, auto, liability, or workers' compensation adjusters. Our goal is to bring interesting topics in the world of claims adjusting to people who are working as an adjuster now and to people who are considering a career as a claims adjuster. Hey, Chantal, how are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
Pretty good. Pretty good. We're on the cusp of spring. Well, spring has happened.
hmm
By the time this airs, spring will be almost a week old. So
Do y'all have the first spring or you start off with like fake spring and then you go back to winter and then you go to first spring and then back to winter and then second spring. Do y'all have that going back and forth like I don't know in one day?
we not really in one day. I mean, the temperature changed like 30 degrees in one day last week.
Okay, it did here too.
Yeah, so that kind of thing happens. It's certainly not on a schedule. It's not like, okay, second week of March, we're going to have early spring, and then third week of March, it goes back to winter. It's a crapshoot. You might have an entire March where it's in the 60s and 70s. That's very rare. Most cases, you'll have mostly winter in March with a break, a
Mhm.
surprise break here or there somewhere. But by this time, everybody is mentally challenged. They're all losing their minds,
Oh,
waiting for the sun to shine.
okay.
Rochester is a very cloudy city.
I would
So
insert that anybody living in the north would be mentally challenged to begin with because it's freaking cold there. I'm
mentally
not real,
challenged probably wasn't the right choice of words. But
especially to me. Okay. But you know what? I'm super excited. This is actually our last topic about the winter. And so now we can actually start looking forward to spring because we're going to be talking about frozen pipe claims. And
yeah,
I just posted on LinkedIn a little video that I did where and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, where my outside pipe had frozen solid, and then the water that the sump pump was trying to get out, what came back, exploded the sump pump cover everywhere, and the pipes came undone. And so that was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. It wasn't necessarily a frozen pipe claim, so we couldn't turn it in for homeowners, but yeah, I've had a little experience. You can go to my LinkedIn and check out that nice little video I put together.
that's an unusual way to have a freeze damage claim. Most times, the supply lines are the ones that freeze, and what you're talking about is a discharge line or almost like a drain line that
Mhm.
had frozen and got blocked up.
Yeah.
And yeah, so where do we start here?
Well, there's places where in the coverage that adjusters get tripped up, and I figured we would be talking about that today.
Sure, yeah. One of the things I had teased in the last episode was one of the most common mistakes I see when evaluating a freeze damage claim. And so adjusters are used to seeing claims involving accidental discharge from a pipe. And that's when a pipe fails, usually due to corrosion,
Mhm,
and it's inside a wall or inside a ceiling or something, and it leaks and causes damage to the surrounding building, drywall, floors, whatever.
mhm.
And that accidental discharge peril in an HO3 has a kind of an exception. They'll pay for the damage from the water, but they won't pay for the repair to the pipe. And typically that's because the pipe has worn out and
Yes.
wear and tear is generally not covered. So it says right in there that we'll pay for the resulting damage, but will not pay for the plumbing repair. So adjusters are used to doing their estimate for the drywall, the flooring, whatever. And then there'll be a plumber's repair invoice, and they'll attach that at the estimate. I'm talking about independent adjusters now, by
hmm
the way,
hmm
when reporting to a carrier, and they'll attach that invoice and just submit it for carrier consideration, recognizing that that repair typically is not covered. Now, that's fine during the summer months and the fall and spring, but when you get into the winter months and you start seeing damage from frozen pipes where the pipe freezes, the pipe breaks open because the ice expands inside it and it bursts the pipe,
Right.
and then water damage results from that, the adjuster, what I've seen adjusters do is take the same approach. Well, this is a leak from a pipe, so we're not going to pay for the repair to the pipe. However, um, this is the damage to the pipe here was caused by freezing, and freezing is a covered peril, and it's different than an accidental discharge claim. So you would pay for freeze damage to the pipe and the resulting water damage. Um, and that's the trip up that I see the most common on these types of claims.
Right. But it would not be covered if it was, let's just say, a commercial policy then, the frozen pipe.
A commercial policy, why
Yeah.
wouldn't it be covered? A
I
freeze
don't
is
know.
a covered.
That's how I'm carrying on the conversation.
Oh, yeah. So
You can tell we rehearsed this.
yeah, you took me by surprise with the question is all. But yeah, freeze is a covered peril on a commercial policy too. So
Right.
same deal. You would
So
have the now that I don't know how the exception reads on an accidental discharge on a commercial. I haven't looked at it in a while.
I believe it reads mostly the same, where if it's a broken pipe or sudden and accidental, we as the insurance carrier don't pay for that, except
Right.
there, and then there's the exception to the exclusion. Um, Now, of course, with both the homeowners and the commercial property policies, you will get into this thing of, quote, if you do everything possible or within your power to maintain heat, end
A
quote.
reasonable effort. You have
Yeah,
to make a
reasonable.
reasonable effort to maintain heat in the property.
Right. And then the question becomes, well, what is reasonable? And what you, because if the insured thinks that they've done that, is that reasonable?
Sure. So if you're going to go away on vacation and you don't want to incur the cost of heating your house like you would if you're living there, and you decide to turn the heat down to maybe 55 degrees, logic dictates that 55 degrees is above the freezing point, so you should be good, except for the fact that you've got this one room bathroom on the one end of the house where there's it's really far from the furnace, and the air doesn't really get into that room as much as a normal. And you could then it could get cold enough in that room then, especially if the winds blow in the right direction and the temperature's the right,
Right.
below freezing or below zero,
Mhm.
you run the risk of that room freezing. Now, what's reasonable? Is it reasonable to set that at 55 and expect that everything's going to be okay? That's a judgment call for the carrier, I guess. Now, if you turn the heat off while you're on vacation in the middle of winter and you live in a cold climate, that's not reasonable. That's
Like your
dumb.
like your son, which we featured on an advertisement for LinkedIn.
Yes. Sorry, Ben. We had to bring
Sorry,
your story into.
but it was such a great story, Ben. So
It was.
thank
It was.
you. So
Thanks,
thank
Ben.
you. We
Yeah.
appreciate it. We really do. Love you. Mean it. Bye. Uh,
Lesson learned.
so, but yeah, that is the thing. And of course, we got to go back to, as I always ask my students, what is a reasonable person? And the answer is, okay, well, that would be a jury. That would be people, your peers. So while an insurance carrier or an adjuster can go, ooh, you know what? I think 55 is probably like the lowest I would go. And I've said 55 before. And I've had my field adjusters, such as you, go take a picture of the thermostat. Although sometimes it has already been reset by that point.
Yeah, that's not really evidence necessarily.
True, but I have asked, by the way, adjusters, I have asked for electric bills or gas bills or whatever, however they heat their home, so I could see the dip in in electric usage or gas usage or whatever.
Right. And we've had many claims where a policyholder will say, that, they've been away from the property, but look, I paid um, the fuel company to deliver propane on a regular basis, and they forgot, and they just didn't show up, and I didn't know. And then you call the fuel company, and they say, we didn't forget. They didn't pay their bill. So is that reasonable or unreasonable? No, I would say not paying your utility bill is
Is
unreasonable. And
unreasonable, yes. And unfortunately, you would get a denial by the insurance company, even though think that your pipe would freeze. Would you? Hold on. I got to think about this. Um, Well, you didn't keep your heat on. So yes, you would get denied by your insurance company because you failed to keep heat on, even
right,
though freezing is a covered cause of loss. And isn't insurance fun? I love insurance. These little
it's
brain teasers that we get. I don't know why more people aren't in insurance. I think we have a selling problem or a marketing problem personally, but that's a whole nother podcast. Anyway,
yes, it is super fun.
it is super
Um,
fun.
it's a lot of complexity, and
If you like
it's
solving
like a
puzzles.
puzzle. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a puzzle.
Oh my God. It's like this, Bill. We're looking,
See,
see, we're like, I'm in Kansas, he's in New York. We're on the same wavelength. It's crazy.
it is. It is.
Crazy. Okay. So, anywho, um, we're talking about how we prove this and what kind of documentation we should be looking for. I had said, gas bills or electric bills or the propane bills or something to that effect. Anything else that you can think of?
As far as proving that they took reasonable steps to maintain heat,
Mm.
well, they might have the heat on, but they left the window open, or they, didn't make a repair. We've had cases where we've had a walkout basement, and someone left the door open, and the wind came in and it froze all the pipes in the basement. The heat was on upstairs, but downstairs in the basement, and it was just in one end. A home is a kind of a building, any kind of building. Is kind of a dynamic structure insofar as the air inside it is going to be different in some areas than others. It's going to be different temperatures, and the
This is
heating system is going to work more effectively in some areas than others. We have a wood stove in our house in addition to a steam boiler. When the boiler's running, the heat is pretty well distributed throughout the house. But if we're relying on just the wood stove, the only room that's really warm is the living room and a few rooms around it. The other end of the house gets very cold if we were to leave the heat completely off. So, um, knowing your house and knowing the dynamics of where the cold spots are is important. Does that does that get into the realm of what is reasonable and what is not? And that's a judgment call.
well, I think this is when the adjuster, and we don't hear this a lot for property losses per se, but a frozen pipe might be an excellent time to take that recorded statement of your insured because this is the time to ask your insured, okay, which room actually gets a little cold? So, for example, when you and your wife, your lovely bride, come and visit Aaron and me for our barbecue tour or whatever,
Mhm.
we are going to put you up in the French room, in the fancy guest room, la ti da. And
Can't wait.
yeah, that room in the winter, super cold, super cold. In the summer, it gets a little warm because it's west facing.
Got it.
So if I had a frozen pipe over there, I would, as the adjuster, I would want to talk to the insured like, hey, what temperature is that room? Yeah, you set your house for, let's say 65, and you had someone coming over and watering your plants, making sure that things were dripping or, turning on the faucets to drip if it happened to get really cold overnight or whatever. But what's the temperature in that room?
Right.
And so in this particular instance, we normally don't take recorded statements for property damage, but this might be one where we'd want to.
I would say that if there's a suspicion of coverage of a coverage issue, um, whether it's the reasonableness of knowing the cold spots in your house, which I regard as kind of a thin um, basis to issue a coverage disclaimer on a freeze claim, but more importantly, if it's an issue of over maintaining heat and a dispute over fuel bills and who
Right.
told who what and when to show up and all that kind of stuff, that might be a good opportunity to take a statement or a good time to, document the insured's position on things
Well,
because what they tell you in that statement, we don't take statements as a gotcha. A lot
true,
of
very true.
attorneys blame us for taking statements because we just want to trick somebody into saying something that's going to hurt their claim. Um, Rather, we look at it as a way to get the facts memorialized so that nobody can change their story later, one way or the other.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and
I ac- I actually talked about that in a expert case that I had where I had said, it's best practice that a field adjuster would go inside and take photos of the inside of the ceiling showing no leaking, no damage, or getting into the attic showing no leaking, no damage, but it's not standard. And of course, best practices is a little bit higher of a bar than what standard is. And it's only after we get nailed in a lawsuit and it's because our field adjuster did not take these photographs and we've had damage creep or something to that effect. And this is slightly off topic, but this is the reason why we now do that, or at least we did at my company, is we said, yeah, I know that it's all on the outside, but do us a favor and get in the attic and take a picture, and then
sure.
go into every single room and take a picture, even if it's a wide lens, but make sure that we can see the ceiling so we don't have that kind of damage creep. And the reason is that we would see, okay, we didn't have that leak on this date, but then we had another storm and now we have a leak, whatever. But same difference here. And also about you were saying the coldness areas. I was thinking particularly when you mentioned that, I have a spot, it's under my sink, and I think that we don't have enough insulation in that area. So when Kansas City or the Midwest had that really cold snap a couple months ago, I actually bought some styrofoam insulation and put it up against that bar wall. It doesn't really help the pipe, but of course I left the faucet leaking and then I opened the door. So that
Mhm.
whole cavity now can be warmer because I've put the insulation up.
Yeah, letting the faucets drip, just cracking them open just a little bit at night when you know you've got extreme cold conditions outside,
Mhm.
can help to prevent, freezing and blockage of pipes. It's not the it's not the end all be all if it gets cold enough that stuff's going to freeze anyway. But that is one trick, and keeping the cabinet doors open is not a bad idea either. Especially when you know um, the pipes are on an outside wall and there's a risk of freezing there.
I do it on all my outside walls. And in fact, for us Southerners who aren't used to having these kinds of really cold extended days, I did look it up and because of course my husband's from Iowa and he's like, no, we don't need to leave it dripping. Yeah, it's fine. And I'm like, oh my God. I mean,
He's probably right.
he's probably right. And he's an insurance adjuster too, as everyone knows. And I sit there and go, oh my gosh, but I can't deal with an insurance adjuster because you know how we are. Yeah. So
So
anyway,
when it comes to prevention, there's one thing that I tell everybody that if you're going away, there's a couple things that you should do to your house while you're away. One, make sure that any fuel deliveries that you have are on schedule and that they're going to happen. So if you have, a propane on site or fuel oil on site, make sure those are topped off. If you've got gas from the street, then probably not too much of a worry there. Um, but the biggest thing you could do, the best thing you could do is just turn the water off. because if your pipes freeze, if for some reason there's a failure of the heating system and the pipes do freeze, you're not going to damage the whole house with a flood as on top of the freeze damage. You're just going to have some pipes that have burst, and those repairs are actually not that expensive as compared to a house that
That's
where
got
the
fun.
water is left running through broken pipes for a week and a half or 2 weeks or where however long it is that you're gone.
Mhm.
That
And you
can cause a
mentioned,
lot of damage.
yeah, and you mentioned someone leaving a window open, and that caused me to remember something. My neighbors texted me and said, "Hey, by the way, we're going to be gone for spring break, and the daughter's boyfriend will be staying at our house, watching the dogs and that sort of thing over the week that we're gone. So in case you see some strange kid." And I'm like, okay, we will grill him down in the basement, slap him around a bit, find out whatever you want to know. And she said, thanks. And I noticed, again, we are going through our false spring, dying of winter in here in the Midwest. And so Monday, it was 32-ish, 30-ish, and it snowed. And so now, today, yesterday it was 80, the day before it was 75.
Wow.
Saturday it's supposed to be 90. Woohoo! I'm super pumped. I hate winter, as everybody knows. Anyway, I our bathroom overlooks their yard, and so I was looking at their house and saw that a window was cracked open. And
Mm,
it reminded me of what you just said. It triggered that. And so maybe when, as an adjuster, you're talking to the insured, you go, hey, did a neighbor keep watch over the house, even from the outside? Get that name and number, maybe talk to that person, because I did think about texting my neighbor and saying, "Hey, I think you have a window open. I can't
right.
I can't tell, but I can see that the sill and the bar is apart, but I don't know if
Yeah.
they have like storm windows on or whatever." Anyway, something
Yeah,
else to think about.
having somebody to check in your property is super important. There's automation too. I mean,
Hmm.
we have a little thermometer in the house that communicates with the Wi-Fi, and I can monitor the temperature of my house from anywhere in the world.
Yes, we have
And
that too.
that's kind of handy.
And we've got
Um,
the really super cool, and we should get them as sponsors, the the water notification things that we've talked about
yes,
before. Yeah.
yes. In fact, the thermometer that we have is made by the same folks. So I can monitor those water sensors and the temperature on the same app. Because we have such an antiquated heating system, we can't use one of the fancy new programmable thermostats that can communicate that way. But there's a lot of those available today for modern systems. We just live in a really old house, so
Yeah. And
um,
sometimes those things spit out a little blurb or whatever. For example, I know when I was working alarm or burglaries,
mhm.
thefts, the insured had to keep or had to have a burglar alarm that reported to a central station or something to that effect. And it would have that open close notification. I would ask the insured to print off that open close report, when they turned on the alarm, when they turned it off, that kind of deal. And so these temperature things may have a little report to be able to give you as adjusters that you could get.
Yeah, mine, I don't know if you can see it here, but you can see a historical readout.
Oh,
I
yeah,
don't
you
really
can't see
see
it,
it.
but
No.
that's okay. See, this is
Yeah.
why you should really watch the YouTube version rather than listening to Bill and Mai's great voice as as we talk about yacht rock.
The salty sounds
Yes,
of
the salty sounds
sultry.
of adjusting on Yacht Rock Radio. Okay, anyway, that's going to be an advertisement.
I guess so. Let's see. What else should we talk about here?
Mm,
Um,
Okay,
How
so
about
what about if we have
severity?
extreme cases of weeks of like we're going through right now, freezing, thawing, which we've done here in the Midwest right now.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
w-
ours hasn't been as extreme as yours, but we've gone from 15 to 16 degrees temperatures up into the 30s and 40s. And that can make a pretty big difference. But when it comes to severity, you could have a very minor freeze where you've got one pipe on an outside wall in an occupied house that froze overnight with no one knew, and then the next morning they woke up and there's some water coming from a weird spot that just didn't make any sense, and you can have probably less than $2,000 in damage by the time you're done there versus a similar case where the same spot freezes, but they're gone for 2 weeks. And then you've got water running down the staircase and freezing. And you go into a property and there's columns of ice from floor to ceiling.
oh, wow.
Yeah. And, um, and those claims can be very complicated because you may get the call when they just discovered it and it's still 15 degrees in the house. And you go there and everything is just covered in ice. And you
Yes.
can't even see what needs to be repaired because it's just covered in
I want photographs of that.
oh, I have many I could probably
Okay.
send you.
Okay. We're
Um,
not going to be able to share them because of confidentiality and all that kind of stuff. Sorry.
yeah,
But I
yeah.
totes want to see that.
I bet you if you hopped on Google, you could find
Oh, I
some
bet we could.
that have been published by people who have experienced homeowners who've experienced that. But I've been in homes where the staircase looks like a luge. It's just the water just ran down the stairs and froze as it went. The column of ice. I have been in a basement where there was a column of ice that was like a 4 foot tree trunk from the basement floor to the floor joist.
Wow.
And every toilet in the place is cracked. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so when you get into a place like that, you can try and assess the damage as best you can, but you're not really going to know what is damaged until it all thaws out.
Okay, so this is
Um,
a good point, if I can interrupt you real quick.
sure.
So here's the advice that I would talk to the adjusters about when either they get the report back from their field adjusters or they're out there writing the estimate right now. We've got insureds who may be represented by public adjusters, and then those public adjusters should know and be able to converse with the homeowners. But let's say that we have unrepresented homeowners. This is when you, as an adjuster, will need to say, hey, I've got this estimate. We've written it as best as we can right now. You are going to have a supplement.
Hmm.
You are. I mean,
Yep.
just point blank, period. So I'm going to give you money right now based off of the damage that we can see. Give this to your contractor, have them contact us once everything gets, thawed out. And of course, once everything gets thawed out, we're going to have to send remediators out there to sop up the water and what have you. But the reason I tell you as adjusters this is because if we don't let the insureds know that there's going to be a supplement, they are going to think this is the only thing they have coming to them. Trust
Right.
me, I have seen this in lawsuits where and this is also the kind of thing where I see homeowners not wanting to begin repairs until all of the damage is estimated, and it's almost counterintuitive, like we won't know what the damage is until we finish with the claim.
Right.
And so you kind of have to trust the process. So as adjusters, I am going to tell you this is the easiest way for you to do this is to go, here's your first estimate. This is just what we have written. It's going to thaw. We're going to thaw it out. You're going to thaw it out. Someone's going to thaw it out. Nature will thaw it out. I have no idea. And then we're
Yeah.
going to come back and write another estimate, and you're going to get more money. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted
No,
to
that's
point that out.
exactly that's exactly how you handle these when you can't always know that here's another this is not a freeze damage situation, but we have a lot of claims involving ice dams
Mhm.
and when the roof leaks, people automatically assume there's damage to the roof and there might be. chances are there isn't in an ice dam claim, but there might be. And if there's 8 inches of snow on the roof, we can't assess the damage to the roof, but we certainly can assess the damage to the interior. So go ahead, write that estimate, get that piece of the claim settled. And then when the snow melts, reopen the claim, go out there and assess the roof and see if there's any roof damage. That's the way to handle that.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, so let's shift to liability. What happens
Yeah.
if there's a tenant? Now, I've got a great story about a tenant, and this is a commercial property case that I handled as an expert witness, and I actually like to use it as a case study sometimes. So,
Okay.
what happens when there is a tenant who maybe turns off the heat or turns it down really low or something to that effect?
What happens? So if it gets cold enough to freeze the pipes, then the pipes may burst and cause water damage, and then the property owner will call his insurance company and make a claim. Um, Now, he could make a claim through the tenant, and he could say, "You have to pay for this damage now." That might be a long road to go. So you're better off calling your own insurance company, and you'll have potentially replacement cost coverage that you can tap into. You'll have to get your deductible, pay your deductible, but that's just the way life goes sometimes. So now, what might happen is that your insurance carrier may contact that tenant and tell them, "Hey, we had to pay $74,262.38 here, and we would like you to write us a check to reimburse us for that." And the tenant calls his insurance company and says, "Hey, they're coming after me for this money. My liability policy, pick it up." And chances are it won't. And the reason is there's an exclusion for property in your care, custody, and control. And if you're renting the property, probably not going to be coverage for water damage from freezing. Now, if you have coverage for fire legal liability, that'll pay for fire damage to the building if you start a fire. But
Which we are not recommending, by the way.
starting a fire or having
Yeah,
fire legal liability coverage.
starting a fire to defrost everything. Not
Right.
recommending that at all.
Right, right. Yeah. So, but nonetheless, you might not have coverage for the liability part of that. Now, to what extent they actually pursue that legally, it depends on the amount of the claim and all that. But that's my perspective on that.
Yeah. I just got and this is what I was working on before we started the podcast. I just got a question from the Big I as one of their Ask the Experts, where the insured is a tenant. And I don't actually remember what necessarily happened, but it was a question about whether the tenant has an insurable interest in the leased space. And I would argue that they do, but the agent was saying there weren't any insurance companies that were giving this tenant property damage coverage.
Yeah, you wouldn't have a line item for coverage on that more than likely.
But you do if the lease, I would argue that you do if the lease makes you responsible, which most leases do, make you as the tenant responsible for the building.
Well, for betterments and improvements, you
Yes.
would have coverage for those items that you as the tenant installed in the building. Um, but the stuff that was already there before you arrived, that's, I believe that would be excluded.
Well, then,
It would certainly be excluded from your property coverage. So when I talk about betterments and improvements, that's actually afforded under the business personal property section. So
mhm,
it's not a liability coverage. That's
right.
actually a first party coverage.
Yeah, I'm sorry I
Um,
switched topics on us.
yeah, that's how I lose my hair when you switch up like
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's like squirrel, and I'm off on another tangent, but that's a current topic that I'm thinking about right now. Although we always argued that there was some kind of insurable interest when the contract, because if I recall correctly, doesn't the liability policy, the commercial liability policies take into effect, and I had to look at, I was in the process of looking it up, take into effect, take into consideration, I guess I should say, the contracts that you have signed and the responsibilities that you have signed?
Well, the contractual liability portion of it, I don't think that supersedes any exclusion, and I
Mhm.
don't think it supersedes the care custody control exclusion. And I believe that exclusion, I can't recite it,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
I
I'm
can't
sorry
either. That's,
today,
I was having
but
to look it up.
but I think it has language in there about property that you rent
Okay.
or lease.
I still have to look it up, but hey, if you know the answer, be sure to drop it in the comments and let us know, tag us on LinkedIn or something like that and go, you guys are a bunch of idiots.
Now,
So,
yeah, I would love to hear that. I hear that every day from
yeah,
other
but
people.
we
So
want to hear it from other people.
we want to hear it from a whole batch of new
Yeah,
people.
just a whole bunch of people. Just let us know and be sure to like share this episode with other people and go, look at these idiots. I mean, why are we
What
listening to them? Or, moreover, listen to these guys. It's comedic effect because these guys are a bunch of idiots. So, either way, we get a lot more subscribers that way, and I'm all about it.
I
So,
want to know though, and I've not really looked into this in detail. I've had claims where we insure an apartment building or a rental property of some residential sort,
mm,
and a personal tenant is living in there, and they cause damage by allowing the pipes to freeze because
mm,
they turned the heat off or didn't pay their bill or whatever. And I don't remember, and I don't remember because I've never really seen a carrier pursue that tenant. You know, if you've got a tenant living in an 800 or $1,000 a month apartment, chances are they're not going to have the assets to pay for, they might have insurance coverage, whether or not it would
maybe they
protect
do.
them in it, maybe they do. Um, what does the HO4 say about it?
Okay, so I have an answer. It
Okay.
might not be the answer. So we had looked into this, uh, and it started off coming with, is an apartment vacant or is it unoccupied? When we were looking for property damage,
Hmm.
and most of the time it came back to being unoccupied rather than vacant. Now, that's again, whole different podcast. But the point is, one of the things that we learned when I was a claims adjuster way back when is that a lot of states will say if the landlord uses the rent to pay for property insurance coverage, then we really can't pursue the tenant as someone who's at fault. It wasn't like the legislation was saying that the tenant is an additional insured, but it was kind of saying the tenant was an additional insured. I
Hmm.
mean, it just didn't come right out and say, and I'm specifically thinking of Oklahoma. I know Oklahoma has a rule like this that if the insured uses their rent money to pay for the property insurance, we can't pursue that tenant who may
Got
have
it.
caused the damage. Now, I'm sure we could pursue that tenant's insurance if they had it, like the HO4, but them themselves, if they don't have it, that is what Oklahoma says no to.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking at an HO4, the liability section here, and there's a lot to absorb here. So I'm not going to
Yeah.
render an opinion on whether or not a renter's policy or an HO4 would cover a negligent tenant if they allowed the pipes to freeze. Um, my guess is that it might. So,
I would,
but
I don't know. I,
I don't know that there's a similar exclusion as to that would be under the commercial policy. That's why.
yeah. So I would say that we've kind of beaten this to a pulp, yes?
Yes, we've
It's a wrap.
beaten the
They
icicles out of it.
Yes, it sounds easy. It sounds simple. We got to remember that freeze, freezing whatever conditions are a covered property or a covered cause of loss.
Yes,
And so if a pipe froze, that pipe may also be covered. So we got to remember that in addition to the ensuing losses.
right.
But in the summer, when we have an accidental damage or burst or whatever, that's when the pipe has been like worn out. And
Yeah, compromise due to corrosion or so now if it's impacted by something like somebody drives a nail through the wall and it hits the pipe and
that would be
that
covered.
would be covered. That's
Yeah.
not well, it is accidental discharge, so
Yes,
I
but
gotta read that again.
what is the direct cause of loss? The
Right,
direct cause of loss would be the nail, and if it's not excluded, it would be covered if we're using an HO or excuse me, a CP 1030, a special form causes of loss.
right,
Regardless, we would be pursuing the nailer for subrogation.
right.
Yeah.
Unless it's a tenant, then it's probably well, you still could pursue anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, see, we're going to get back into the like spiral again.
Right.
And so
It
next,
always takes me back to the forms though.
yeah,
Whenever we get into these little questions, I'm over here on
w-
Google looking
it-
up the
it-
the policy form
which
and
is which is
trying to
a good
do
point.
a coverage analysis while we're both talking at the same time.
It's so super hard, which is a good point though, because everything is driven by the policy.
Yeah.
Right. And so as an adjuster, that's exactly what you have to know. Also, what you have to know is our next episode will be airing on April 9th. It is going to
Yes.
be about spring storms and property claims. Woo!
Yes.
All the thunder and lightning, very, very frightening.
Lots of wind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep, lots of wind.
Maybe some
So,
hail.
lots of hail. We actually had some hail here in Kansas recently.
Oh yeah. I
Yeah,
one of the cat adjusters that was helping out here had mentioned that and got in his truck and took off.
took
So
off.
he's out there doing hail claims now.
I am thinking about putting a note on my front door saying, "Dear roofing salespeople, we're both adjusters. Our roof is fine," because everyone who's getting a new roof around here, they have all the insurance or all the roofing companies send their salespeople around to knock on doors and say,
Right.
"Let us take a look at your roof." No, no, we're good.
Yeah,
We're good. We're
we're
adjusters. We're
good.
good. And then they slowly back away from us in fear, which is fun.
Yeah, so that wraps up another fun episode, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we will see
Uh,
you on April 9th.
April 9th. Thanks.
Thank
Take care.
you.
We'll talk soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Thanks for joining us on the Art of Adjusting podcast, where we talk about life as an insurance adjuster.
If you enjoyed this podcast or this episode, please give us 5 stars and a review. It does help the algorithm pick us up.
Hit that subscribe button real quick and tell all of your adjuster friends to check this out as well. For independent adjusting services, go to www.auten.claims. And for anyone interested in working as an independent liability adjuster, go to the Contact Us tab to join our roster.
In the meantime, you can contact me at theartofadjusting.com for consulting and training purposes.